Good morning, class. I'm down here at Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park practicing some social distancing. As you look around, you don't see anybody. So making sure we keep 6 feet apart. Wouldn't be here, but I had a test planned, which was not surprisingly canceled. Didn't notify us in time, but down here anyways, figured it was a good chance to get a little run in, get some exercise. Looking for sunshine, but it's not here. It's very foggy, very eerie. But Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, great place to run, great place to get out. The National Park Service is keeping it open for a little bit. Not the visitor center, not the restrooms, no other facilities, but just the trails. But like I said, not as many people here as usual, so that's a good thing. Just making sure we keep our distance regardless. But we're down here at Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, and one of the reasons I thought it'd be good to stop here is because it has a direct connection to an 8th grade standard that either you will learn about or have learned about already in the classroom. It was a very important part of Sherman's March to the Sea, the Atlanta campaign, in which he drove through Georgia in a series of battles and really devastated the state and turned the tide, or maybe not turned the tide, but sealed the deal for the Union victory in the Civil War. The battle here took place in 1864, so about a year prior to the end of the war. But General Sherman had already passed through Resaca, close to where we live. So if you have a chance before any other closures occur, I recommend going to the county park in Resaca, getting on the trails there, getting out with your family. Not in big groups, small groups, staying away from people, but getting out, getting some sunshine, and taking advantage of this free medicine that we like to call nature. But he, had went through Dalton, Rocky Face, Snake Creek Gap, not necessarily him, but his army, and had went through Resaca and had made it down to Atlanta, and he was looking for that decisive victory to seal the deal for the campaign and capture Atlanta. But the Confederates thought otherwise, and General Johnston secured a victory here at Kennesaw Mountain, which slowed the march to Atlanta, but not by much. But interestingly enough, if you look here, you can see some actual Civil War earthwork. So I know we talked earlier about some of the things here at the battlefield. One of the Georgia standards talks about the impact that the Civil War had on the economy, local and statewide, in Georgia. And as I was running down through here, I noticed there was an interesting sign, as you can see here, and it's talking about John Hardage, who owned a mill here on this creek that we're about to cross over. Owned a mill, and it was a booming place before. North Georgia was full of sawmills. We'll go ahead and move over to the creek here. North Georgia was full of sawmills prior to the Civil War and afterwards, but obviously the Civil War had a huge impact on local economies. By 1864, Hardage and his family had to flee the area, and many never returned. So imagine having to flee your home, your job, your parents, and then never returning to your place of business. But here's the creek. So imagine a sawmill churning water, making wood on the edge of this creek. Maybe a family home, a cabin, maybe up the hill there. Not really sure, but there's history all around us, and if we have an opportunity to take the time to find it, it's great to connect it to what we're learning about in class. See ya. So I just wanted to stop again on our virtual field trip and point out an additional earthwork. As you can see, general reminder to stay off the earthworks, but better yet, they've given us a visual of the cannons, and I want you to think about how it must have felt as a soldier, Union or Confederate, to overlook this pitch of this battlefield, minus the cars obviously, and just see fog, see devastation, and just try to feel how they felt and just try to, imagine, well, how would I handle that as an individual? And then, just take the time to discuss that with your parents, okay? So I'm not quite at the top yet, but I thought it was important to stop for a second and point out some of the rocks around us on the hill. And if you think back earlier in the year when 8th grade was looking at geographical regions of Georgia, we really talked about when you get around the Piedmont, how the rocks change. And you also have to remember that Kennesaw Mountain is somewhat in the foothills of the base of the Appalachian Mountain chain. And so here we have a great example of some hints that the Piedmont is coming, and we're transitioning out of from where we live in Calhoun, which is the Ridge and Valley, heading into the Piedmont, and a couple hours from here eventually into that upper coastal plain. But just something to think about. So I'm stopping again because we have an excellent opportunity to link standards from all 3 grade levels, 6th, 7th, and 8th, into one learning opportunity. Like I said, we're making our way up the mountain. Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park, one of the most pivotal moments of the Atlanta campaign for General Sherman. Did lose the battle, but obviously won the campaign, ultimately won the war, devastated Georgia, changed the economy, eventually would lead to the need for federal intervention in Georgia and Reconstruction. But while we're making our way up the hill, we can look around and we can see that this is a clear example of one of the ecosystems, the ecosystem we live in, but one of the ones that we've talked about quite a bit, 7th grade life science, deciduous forest. We have a mixture of trees here, which is very common for all deciduous forests in the southeast. We have loblolly pines, we have oak trees of all different types, we've got sweet gum, we have a variety of vines, we have lichen on a lot of these rocks, we have a variety of mosses. If you listen, you can hear several birds. We've got, squirrels are everywhere. Of course, they're not there when you need them. There's deer around here, a wide variety of animals. Every now and then, probably here in a few months, a bear may pass through. So we've got 8th grade standard for Civil War Georgia studies. We've got 7th grade life science going on here. And interestingly enough, we've got a connection to 6th grade physical science. We've discussed erosion and the impact it has on a different variety of soils. And we can see firsthand the impact that erosion has on the natural environment and on human activity. So stay tuned as we make our way to the top. We're getting closer to the top here at Kennesaw Mountain. The rocks are a little more slick than I expected, obviously due to the fog. We just talked about the connection to various standards, but one thing that really stood out to me of the mountain is that as we're approaching the top as a class here, if you've noticed something, there's actually some sunshine making its way through the fog, through the clouds. And if we were reading a story, that would symbolize hope and a positive future. And at this point during the week, I think that serves as a great reminder that we can always find hope and symbolism in things around us, especially in literature. We'll stay tuned and we'll be at the top here. Just wanted to give you another visual of more earthworks. This is atop Kennesaw Mountain, or almost at the very top, one of the high points. This had been General Johnston's area, not his specific area, but his armies overlooking the mountain, firing upon Union troops. So very interesting. Just stopping for a second to show you some of this slab rock here. It's a cedar tree over there. Hardwoods for the most part, and cedars. Don't really see any pine trees left here, but you can see the trees are shorter up here. They're They're probably older than we think, but this is primarily going to be due to weathering. But we've got this slab rock, and it gives us an excellent example of the transition we're seeing from Ridge and Valley to Piedmont. South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, even Alabama. When you get into Piedmont areas, you're going to see this slab rock, and it's a clear indicator of a transition between geographical regions. So class, we have recently walked over Little Kennesaw Mountain. We are making our way to the top of Kennesaw Mountain. Very rocky, so I'm just walking here trying to be safe, but we've noticed the skies have become more clear. Let's think back to ELA, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. One of our main goals, a key standard found under reading literary and reading informational texts, is determining main ideas and or summarizing the passage. If we were a story right now, we see that there's a clear theme of hope and persistence. And if we continue on through times of struggle and challenges, things get brighter. Our decisions become more clear, and we have more hope for the future. And I think that's a great connection we can make to this social distancing and the pandemic currently, is that, hey, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep pushing, and we're going to have a bright future and great hope, and things are going to be better than they ever were before. Good morning, everyone. Hey, we're wrapping up our virtual field trip here at Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park. We have a beautiful field in the distance with pine trees, redbuds, and hardwoods all around us. But while we're on this field trip, we've been practicing social distancing. We've talked to minimal people. If we have spoken to anybody, we've kept our distance. I've made sure that we've stayed 6 feet apart. Before closing up, just want to review a few things we talked about. We looked at a few standards today across different grade levels. For Georgia Studies, we looked at geographical regions in Georgia and how Kennesaw Mountain is in that transitional point between the Ridge and Valley and the Piedmont, and how some of the indicators such as the rocks and whatnot show that. Definitely when you get up top, if it was a clear day, we could have seen Atlanta and the transition into the pure Piedmont area and the Piedmont Plateau. We also talked about the Atlanta campaign and the impact that it had on the Civil War, specifically here in Georgia. We also discussed how the Civil War influenced a variety of factors at the local level, whether it was family life and or businesses. Then we discussed some 7th grade life science standards, in which we looked at the deciduous forest here at Kennesaw Mountain and the ecosystem around it that you can still hear right now as we speak. We also talked about some 6th grade science and how erosion control and erosion in the soil is playing a major part here at Kennesaw Mountain. We closed as we journeyed up the mountain and tried to link these real life standards or real life events to some ELA standards, looking at determining a theme or a main idea from our trip today. And we've seen how it started off very foggy and gloomy, sort of how our week has started off here in Georgia, and then now we've got some sunshine, and it actually opened up as we climbed the mountain and handled challenges. So to summarize, we just want to make sure we keep a positive outlook the next few weeks here, online, in class, and at home. We want to make sure that we're practicing good soft skills with our parents and with our community, anyone else we come into contact with virtually. We want to make sure that we're reviewing those social skills we've discussed throughout the year. And we want to make sure that we're helping mom and dad out around the house. We've asked you to keep a chore list at home and write about that each week, and that's very important. One more thing we could possibly start looking into is working on some more of those money skills and how we can talk to mom and dad or grandparents or whoever it is that we're staying with about our budget and how we can help in this time of uncertainty and help budget and help learn about money and cash flow. But the most important thing is to make sure that we're still keeping a positive attitude, we're learning, and we're growing, and then we're getting ready to come back to school here in a few weeks or whenever it is and finish the school year strong. See you soon. Thanks for joining me.